Welcome, folklore enthusiasts. This is Fabric of Folklore, the podcast where we dig into the interweavings of folklore and its history to better understand ourselves and our cultures. So, if you like folktales and you love learning new things, deep and meaningful things, then you found your podcast. I'm your host, Vanessa Y. Rogers, and I'm so glad that you're joining us today because we've got a really fantastic show for you. Our guest, she's from the Netherlands, so her name I might butcher a little bit. Nicki Van Ingen Schenau. Can you pronounce it for us? Okay. And she's a native of the Netherlands, but she's the founder of Tokyo Tours, which she founded back in 2013 when she moved to Japan with her now former husband and founded Tokyo Tours after loving being a tour guide to visiting friends and family and having difficulty finding work that was in English. She has 10 years of experience giving historical tours, which included lots of folklore and more recently began including ghost tours as well. She's now back in the Netherlands but runs the business side of Tokyo Tours from her home, and she has detailed knowledge of the intricacies of Japanese history, culture, folklore, and mythology. And we are so excited that you're here with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So let's start with kind of your journey to starting this tour guide company. Can you walk us through how it began?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I had an online date with a Japanese guy. And the reason I wanted to have a date with him was like, I don't know anyone who's Japanese. He must have an interesting backstory, how he came in the Netherlands. And I wasn't really expecting anything to happen. And 5 years later, we are living together in Amsterdam. And he asked me at some point, how would you feel to live like 2-3 years in Japan? Because he grew up in the Netherlands. He was taken there as a baby by his parents. So he had no experience living as a Japanese person in Japan. And although they spoke Japanese at home, he went to Dutch school and basically grew up mostly Dutch. So I said, yeah, sure, see if you can find a job. And I didn't really give it much thought. So I thought, well, my English is not bad. And I have my bachelor's degree and I have a ton of experience, so they will probably be lined up around the block to hire me. So my husband, we got married for the visa, and he got the job in Japan. And then 3 months later, because I wanted to give him some time to acclimate and see if it was really something that he wanted to continue with. So 3 months later, I followed him. I quit my job, and I thought, well, 2-3 years, I can put my career on hold. It's fine. So I came there, and everywhere I was using my husband's last name. So everywhere they thought, oh, well, she's a Japanese person who happens to speak English very well. And I got a lot of interest in my resume. And then everyone was at some point like, oh, so you're fluent in Japanese, right? And I'd be like, oh, not exactly. So they would be like, oh, yeah, we'll call you and we'll be in touch. And I'll never hear from them again. So after the 50th rejection, I thought, well, this is not working. And then I thought, I'll just go and work at the Dutch embassy and I'll just hand out the passport at the window. And I mean, I'm assuming you don't need Japanese for that, or maybe just very rudimentary. And even there, they were like, no, we need fluent Japanese. I was like, why? And then I thought, okay, I'll just study Japanese full-time, 9 to 5 for a year, and then I'll be fluent, and then I can get my job. So then 2 years in, I still wasn't up to the level where I was able to speak business Japanese fluently. So I was having a moaning session with a friend who happened to be flight attendant for the Royal Dutch Airline. Like, I can't find a job, and this is Japan, it's terrible, and I'm so dependent, I don't have my own money, and it's horrible. And then she suggested, why don't you become a tour guide? So I was like, I have no experience in tourism. I don't have a degree in it. I've never started my own business, let alone in Japan. How am I going to do that? And she said, well, why don't you just create a website and the email address, and I'll take care of the rest. So I thought, well,
wow, what a friend.
Yeah. So, but I really thought, oh, this is one of those cases where people say, yeah, I'll go and help you. And then you never hear from them again. So just to be on the safe side, I created the website and the email address, and I thought I'd never hear from her again. And then after 1 week, I got an email from someone like, oh, yeah, I read somewhere that you do tours, and I would love to hire you to show me around Tokyo, and I'm so glad that you're local. So I really fell off my chair, literally, like, oh, my God, I was so not expecting that. And it immediately took off by storm. And I was working night and day, like starting 4 a.m. in the morning to go to the fish market, and followed by day tour, then followed by night tour. So come home at 11 in the evening and then start again the next day. So yeah, I was super busy. And then in the summer, there was this girl who sent me an email like, yeah, I see that you do guided tours. Would you consider hiring me? And I thought, no. But to be honest, it would be nice to have a day off occasionally. So why not? And that's how my business, right from the start, was growing. And I was hiring people. And I started contacting travel agents. And they were like, oh, and you know someone in Kyoto and in Osaka and in Nara and then Hokkaido, and little by little, it's like an oil stain. It started to spread up until COVID, which was supposed to be the best year ever because of the Tokyo Olympics. And I really had to disappoint people like, no, we're fully booked. We cannot do a tour with you anymore because I don't have the people. And then suddenly it was like, yeah, the season is starting. Oh, no, it's not. The country is closed. Schools are closed. Everything's closed. So, yeah, and basically that coincided with the end of my marriage. So I was like, maybe it's a good time for me to go back to Amsterdam. I will have more opportunities. Career-wise and romance-wise, and maybe after 10 years, I think it's been enough. I mean, the atmosphere in Tokyo had not become very pleasant, especially towards foreigners. People in the street would look at me like, oh my God, are you an escaped animal from the zoo? What are you doing here? So, and I would sit down in the subway and people would get up and move over to the next bench and
oh man, else. That would be difficult.
Yeah. And there would be elevators saying, this one is for Japanese people only. If you're not Japanese, please use the other elevator and things like that.
Oh. That's interesting.
So yeah, I mean, it was really like, yeah, we are Japanese, and of course we cannot be responsible for the spread of coronavirus. So whenever there's a new strain, it must have come through those dirty foreigners because Japanese people could never infect any other Japanese. So yeah, I was really like, yeah, I think it's time for me to go. This is I've outstayed my.
But the company is still, the company is still going strong.
Yes. Since 2018, I have a partner. Her name is Stephanie, and she is basically my right hand. I was supposed to go back to the Netherlands permanently in 2018. Which in the end didn't happen. So I thought, well, I'm going to move back permanently, so I should just quit the business and sell it. So I asked her, would you be interested in taking over the business from me? And she said, no, I think that's a terrible idea, but I would like to become your partner. How would you feel about that? And I thought, oh, I never considered it, but that sounds good. And she is like, I wouldn't say total opposite, but she has definitely different strengths than I do. And she's very detailed oriented. I'm more of a big picture kind of person. So she takes care of all the local stuff and all the admin stuff, and she loves lists and spreadsheets and those kind of things. So
Sounds like a
all the
good
stuff
good
that I don't
partnership
like to
then.
do. So yeah, it's a perfect
Yeah.
match. And it also
Well, we would
allows me
love
to come
it.
back. So
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So we would love it if you could give us kind of a tour, if you could be our tour guide in Japanese folklore
yes.
and just tell us a few of your favorite stories
Mhm.
that kind of help inform us of the culture and the history of Japan.
Sounds great. Well, then first I would like you to meet my friend. This is Dharma. This is not
Okay.
necessarily a mythological creature, but I thought it would be nice to show you guys. As you can see, one of his eyes is not colored in. So once you buy this Dharma, the best time to buy it is in January, in the new year. You buy the Dharma, and it won't have any eyes at all. So what you
Okay.
need to do is you need to color one of its eyes and make a wish and put it in a location where you see it daily, so you are reminded of your wish. And then when the wish comes true, then you can color in the other eye. And actually, there's another ceremony where all the Dharma get burned once a year. So kind of a thank you for the gods, to thank you for the wish coming true. And this one
And
is pink. The original color is red. It represents a bearded man, and it comes from Buddhism. It's a Bodhidharma, and well, there's different colors. So the original one is red, and then there's other colors that represent something else, like pink is love, and gold is money, and then there's
okay.
other colors. So if you go to Japan, these are very light and inexpensive. So this is a very cute gift to give to your friends. They have smaller ones, they have bigger ones. So this is Dharma.
Do you know where the tradition came from? Where is that tradition from?
Well, yeah, it's been there for a long time. I mean, I think it originates from Gunma Prefecture, and it is meant to bring happiness and prosperity and ward off accidents and misfortune. Um, so in Japan, it is kind of muddled, the religion. And the way why I say that is because originally the religion in Japan is Shintoism. So that is kind of like Taoism in China, where they believe in spirits, and basically, it's not really spirits; it's more like essence. So anything can have an essence. So like even a rock or a tree or anything, especially in nature, can have this essence or spirit and become godlike. The only downside is that there is no afterlife. So in Shintoism, once you are dead, then that's the end, and goodbye. So then when Buddhism came over from first India and then China and then Japan, it kind of got interwoven. So basically, what people do is when you're alive, you are a Shintoist and you do all the Shinto ceremonies. For instance, a very famous one is Shichigo-san. That literally means 753, and that is for children. So it's to thank the temple and the gods for the health of your children, because a lot of the times they wouldn't live up to this age. So if your
Right.
child would live up to this age, then you would go to the temple and be thankful for the fact that your child was still alive. And today,
So you go to the temple when they're 3, when they're 5, and when they're 7. Is that right?
yes. So for girls, it's 3 and 7, and for boys, it's 5. So
Okay.
you take your child in the year that they became this age. You bring them to the temple in November, and then you dress them up in a cute, tiny little kimono that is specifically for this purpose. So you don't use this kimono for any other purpose. And there's this whole ceremony with the priest, and then afterwards the children will get some small presents. And usually you do a photo shoot because it's autumn season, so there's nice red leaves everywhere. So, and with a nice kimono, it looks very nice. So that is an important Shinto ceremony. And then the emperor, that's also kind of murky because before the World War II, the emperor had always been the living embodiment of God on earth. And the Americans couldn't kill the emperor for his war crimes, so instead they stripped him of his title. So he can still perform all kinds of rituals, like to ensure a good rice harvest and that kind of thing. But he can no longer call himself a living god. That is also one of the reasons why the previous emperor was able to step down, because before it was for life, like the Pope. So you basically didn't have a choice, and you needed to keep on going until you literally drop dead. But so up until the point where you pass away, that is when you start having a Buddhist ceremony. So basically what they do is the priest will give you a new name, a Buddhist name. And it's usually very long name because you need to pay per letter. So I don't know. It always seems curious to me why these names are so long. But in any case, so if you go to the graveyard, you will never see the actual name of the people. You will see the new Buddhist name that they have. And basically, from the time that you pass away, the priest will ask your spirits to go into this figurine. And the figurine, your family will get this figurine, and they can build a small shrine in the living room, and then offer incense and rice or fruit or sake, like alcohol, to you on a daily basis, and ask you to protect the house and give blessings and that kind of thing. And also to ensure that you have a good afterlife. There are certain times after you pass away, after a certain number of years, there needs to be special ceremonies to ensure your peace and tranquility in the afterlife, and to have a good afterlife. Because if your family does not take care of you in this way, then you will suffer in the afterlife. So fortunately, there's also a very pragmatic rule for that. You don't necessarily have to be there personally, so you can just pay the priest to perform the ritual, even when you, the family of the person who passed away, isn't around. And as long as the priest does the ritual, it's fine. And then there is a special week in August when everyone is free, and then you have to go to your ancestral grave and clean everything. And that is kind of like the Day of the Dead, comparable to Mexico. That is when people commemorate the people who passed away and clean the graves and take care of all of that. So basically, that is how the religion works. And to go back to the Shinto religion, so the Shinto religion basically believes that everything has a spirit. So if you go hiking in Japan, often you see these piles of rocks that are piled up. And you should never disturb those, because Japanese people believe that it's a spiritual place and there is a spirit there protecting the area. So if you see a pile of rocks, you can add one to it if you like, but don't uh, pull it out.
So I've always wondered about them because they're here as well. I mean, they're everywhere I've been when on trails, and I wasn't clear on what they represent.
Yeah.
Do they have a meaning?
Well, I don't know about other countries, but in Japan, it signifies that it's a sacred place. So there's two ways to
Okay.
see if a place is sacred. One is the rocks piled up, and another way is if you've ever seen a sumo wrestler, there's kind of like these lightning bolts hanging from his belt.
Uh-huh.
Because sumo also originates as a ritualistic dance, and it didn't become a fight until much later. And
Okay.
yeah, so if you see a tree or two rocks with a rope in between, and there's some lightning bolts coming from it, usually it's made out of paper and it's white. That means that it's a
Okay.
sacred place. And also, the temple maidens, the Vestal virgins that work at the Shinto shrine, they usually have in their hair something, paper and white, that also signifies that they are sacred.
Okay. So they're what are this? What are they called? What kind of maidens? The temple maidens?
Like Vestal virgins.
Okay.
So
And so, what is their job?
well, they wear these red robes, and it depends on what temple you go to, because they're like before it was 100% girls that only performed special rituals, but nowadays it's also to man the souvenir shop. So you can just work part-time as a Vestal Virgin and basically just man the souvenir shop, and it's not anything particular. But there's still some temples where the Vestal Virgins have some special significance and need to perform some special rituals, usually very early in the morning. One of these rituals you can see in Akihabara. There is a temple there, and if you go there early in the morning, you can see the Vestal Virgins perform the ritual. So if you're interested in that, you should definitely go there.
And what does the ritual look like? What do they do in the ritual?
Yeah, it looks like a kind of dance. So.
Oh, okay. So is there music? Are there musicians as well?
I've never been there myself because I'm not really a morning person, so I wouldn't know. But that's the information I got from it in any case. So I did recommend other people to go there sometimes. It's the Myorin Temple, I think. In any case, so to get back to the spirits again, so basically in Japan, in summer, Japanese people like to tell ghost stories to each other, because the idea behind it is if you tell a ghost story or a scary story, then you will need to shiver because it's so scary, and that kind of cools you down. So talking about yokai, that's the kind of like the supernatural entities, is a really summer pastime. So that's when they talk about these. And so basically, yokai is like one name fits all. So a yokai can be several different things. It's usually some kind of shapeshifter. So the most recognizable yokai that people might know is, for instance, the kappa. Kappa is maybe if you go to a sushi restaurant, you have ordered the kappa maki, the cucumber roll.
Okay.
The reason it's called kappa maki is because the kappa monster, it's a sea monster, and he really loves cucumbers for some reason. I don't know what the origin is. But in any case, it is basically a monster that lives in the rivers and really likes small children. So if the small children are playing by the river, it will grab them, pull them underwater, or some animal who's drinking, they'll pull them in and drown them and kill them. So not the most pleasant creature.
It seems like a story to keep kids out of the water.
Yeah. That's what I always feel. So to get the kids to not play so close to the water is the mom saying, "Watch out for the kappa!
Yeah,
The kappa will get you." So yeah, that is one. And then there is the fox. The foxes are very famous as well. So if you go to the Fushimi Inari Shrine, that is the most well-known shrine in Kyoto, with all the red torii, the gateways. So if you go to that temple, there's lots of gateways, and you will see fox statues everywhere.
Okay.
Because an Inari shrine is for rice harvest. So there are 33,000 Inari shrines in Japan, and that is only counting the ones that are staffed. So if you count the ones that are not staffed, then there's a lot more. But obviously rice harvest is the most important thing in Japan. So the Inari shrine is always signified by the red gateway. So there's lots of red gateways, one after the other, and you can go through the path and then have a look. But at the beginning, there's always two fox statues, and there's always two different ones. And the reason for that is, first of all, foxes, the kitsune, the gods, they love stuff made out of rice, because the rice treats are often very sweet, and apparently the foxes love them. So that often they offer sake, because that's also made out of rice, and sweet rice cakes to the foxes. And foxes are considered shapeshifters, and they can, it's always women, almost always women, sometimes men, but mostly women that can do that. So the women can shapeshift from fox into a person and back again. And the kitsune can also, it's also the link between the gods and man. So if you have some kind of message that you want to convey to the rice god, then you can let the kitsune, the fox, know, and the fox will go up to the god and shapeshift, and then give your message. And actually,
so how do you give a message? Do you just like whisper it to the fox, or do you give them a note, or?
That I'm not sure about. I'm pretty sure you just say a prayer or something. So in the past, there were also at the Inari Shrine, they just kept a lot of foxes and let them breed there. But obviously that is not very feasible anymore. So now they use the statues everywhere. And if you look carefully, the two images are never identical. So every fox is an individual and will look different from any of the other foxes. So you can also often buy little fox statues that you can leave at the temple, and these are also all different. So
and these are Shinto temples.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, and the kitsune is also related to mental disease. So whenever someone had a mental issue, they would believe that this person would have been taken over by a kitsune, by a malicious fox spirit. And if no exorcism could be performed, they would try and burn out the fox spirit. So the person suffering from this illness would be severely burned to try to get rid of the fox spirit. So yeah, nowadays there's still strong taboo on mental illness, to be honest. Fortunately, they don't believe that you can be taken over by fox spirits anymore. But yeah, it's
So there's no burning ceremonies
yeah,
anymore.
no, fortunately, not that I know of in any case. So yeah, then there's the kitsune. So that's almost always related to females. There are some exceptions where men can also shape shift into fox, but generally it's women. And
Okay.
then another really famous one is um, the badger and the raccoon. So there's
Hmm.
a raccoon dog in Japan, and they also have badgers. And these are not really malicious. They're generally more like tricksters. So they can
Okay.
also shapeshift. So especially the raccoon, if you see him, I hope I'm allowed to say that this. If not, warning, you should cut this part. But the raccoon has huge testicles, and he
Okay.
can use the testicles for all sorts of reasons. So he can hide things underneath and turn it into blanket and put stuff inside it. So if you see the statue, it also has a huge, yeah, testicles. So and yeah,
How interesting.
yeah, and he's very mischievous. So, for instance, there's a story that the raccoon dog goes to a bar and then he puts some kind of spell over the owner, and he orders lots of food and drinks, and
Hmm.
he pays for everything. And then when he leaves, the owner is very happy, like, oh, I made so much money from this crazy raccoon that wanted so much food and drink. And then when he goes and looks, it's actually not money that he receives, but it's leaves. So the
Oh
raccoon
no.
dog has tricked him to think that it's money, but it's actually not. So yeah, the both the badger and the raccoon represent mischievousness, and they try to
Hmm.
trick you and try to pull one over on you, but it's usually not very malicious. So it's more like something fun, like a fun story you can tell a friend, like, yeah,
Uh-huh.
I thought I made this so much money, but actually he got the better of me, and this happened, like that. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, those are some of the more famous yokai. And then there is this other one that is quite relevant. That is, she's kind of a mermaid. She's called Amabi, and
Okay.
it is kind of, she has the beak of a bird, but she has long hair and she has these gills like a fish. And the this mermaid, who also has fins, appeared out of the sea and was there to promise prosperity and a good harvest. And she
Yeah.
said that if there's anyone around who is feeling ill, then you should draw her likeness and show it to the person who's ill, and then they will become better. So that suddenly became very relevant again during COVID, and the government actually made a logo with the Amabi to kind of signify, like, oh, we're all going to get better, it's no big deal, and it's fine. So
And do people actually do this in like because they believe it or just because it's part of their traditions?
it's hard to say because Japanese people are super superstitious. Like, for instance, if someone has an exam, then you will give them Kit Kats because
Hmm.
Kit Kats, the sound of the word kind of sounds the same as to conquer in Japanese. So if you want them to succeed in the exam, you give them a Kit Kat for good luck.
Right.
And there's even special temples you can go to, and you can get the HB pencil. So the pencil is
Uh-huh.
going to be blessed by the priest. So if you make the exam with this blessed pencil, it's more likely that you will pass the exam. And there's another temple like the Atago Shrine. That's also a very famous one. Um, the Atago Shrine has a very steep stairway, and it's located in Tokyo. And there once was this samurai during the Edo period. No, later. Yeah, around the Edo period, late Edo period. And the emperor was there, and then this samurai wanted to impress the emperor, so he took his horse and took the horse on horseback up the stairs, which are very steep, and the steps are quite big. And the emperor was so impressed by his horsemanship and him being able to take the horse all the way up the stairs, that he promoted him and gave him a higher position in his army, which is normally pretty much impossible because you are born into a rank and there's almost no way to improve your station. So this was a very cunning feat of the samurai. And now, if you want to get a promotion, then you need to walk up the stairs and give some money to the temple and pray, and then you're more likely to get a promotion. You can get a special charm as well to ward off evil spirits. So yeah, and even with New Year's, if you are in Japan between December 31st and January 4th, you will see bamboo and pine branches everywhere. And basically, before everyone had a garden, but now obviously in Tokyo, everyone lives in such a tiny apartment that it's impossible to have a garden. So hotels and offices will have a very nice planter with some bamboo and some pine and some decorations. And they ask a priest to come by, and the priest will bless the bamboo and will ask spirits to temporarily take over this decoration and to bless the office or house or whatever it is. So you need to have that in this time frame in front of your door to make sure, because this is a very vulnerable time. So to make sure no evil spirits come into your house. And
why is it a vulnerable time?
Yeah, because it's the end of the year and the new year is just starting. So from the 31st of December, you have to go to the temple or shrine to get the blessing for the new year. So as long as you don't have all the blessings yet, you are in a very vulnerable position and bad things can happen to you. So if you want to make sure you have a prosperous year and everything goes right, then you need to go to the temple. And if you want to be extra safe, there are 7 lucky gods. So then you need to do the whole round and go to all the temples with the 7 lucky gods. And then you are more assured that things go well. And then there's also, if you go to the shrine, there will be a placard, and it will be divided into rows, and it will have numbers and colors, and that signifies for both men and women there are special ages where you are particularly vulnerable to succumb to certain diseases, or fatigue, or things like that. For women, it's especially around the childbearing ages where you might not come out of childbirth unscathed. So basically the ages that are colored bright pink, those are the most vulnerable ones. And then the few years around them, like 2-3 years around them, are also significant. So if you want to be absolutely certain, then at the beginning of the year, you need to go to a special temple and have another ceremony done. So basically, all the people that are particularly vulnerable that year because of their age all come together, and then they do this hour-long ceremony, and you get this plaque, and it's quite expensive too. But in any case, that is to ward off the evil. And there's even another temple where you can go where they have a special ceremony and you can take your handbag and they will purify your handbag with smoke, and then nothing bad will befall your handbag, so you will never lose your wallet or your phone or anything inside your handbag.
So that's particularly good for people who are prone to losing things.
Yes. And also at the beginning of the year, you need to get the Omikuji. So Omikuji is basically means fortune. So in Tokyo, if you go to Asakusa Temple or Sensoji Temple in Asakusa, there are all these wooden drawers, and there's numbers on them. And in front of them will be iron canister, and there's sticks inside the canister, and there's one tiny little hole on top. So what you need to do, basically, you should actually do it in January preferably, but you can also do it throughout the year. It doesn't really matter. So you need to donate 100 yen in the slot, and then you need to shake the canister, and it has all these bamboo sticks, and the bamboo sticks have numbers on them that correspond with the drawers. So you shake it and you turn it upside down, and then one will come out. You need to read the number on the stick and then go to the drawer that has the corresponding number, and then you can take out the fortune. And one side will be in Japanese, but the other side will be in English. So it is Google Translate kind of English, so maybe it will not completely make sense, but it will give you some kind of impression of what your year is going to look like. And again, Japanese people are super pragmatic, so if the fortune is not to your liking, you need to fold up the fortune and you can tie it around the special gate and leave it there, and it's not going to come true. And if it's like daifuku, that is like big luck, and that's the best one you can get, then you should fold it again and then put it inside your wallet and leave it there for 1 year, and it will give you good luck, and then the fortune will come true.
Okay, wow. This all seems very intricate.
Yeah.
Where do they learn about where you go to different temples? Is this taught? I mean, they don't have church services.
No.
Do they learn this in school? Do they just learn it at home?
Yeah, at home and in school. And I mean, Japan is all about rules and traditions and unwritten rules, and there are so many ways you can screw up in Japan because you simply don't know. Like, for instance, a friend of mine who works for PricewaterhouseCoopers, he had a business meeting and his coat was soaking wet, and he walked into the office building and he was wearing his coat, and they looked at him, and that was the end. So he didn't have a leg to stand on, basically, because he
was wet?
Came in with a wet coat. He should have folded the coat and put it over his arm, because it's bad manners to come in with a dripping wet coat. Also, for umbrellas, they will either have these plastic bags that you can use to put your wet umbrella in, or they have kind of like sheets that you can like bounce it against the sheet, and to make sure all the droplets go off, so you don't trail in this wetness from the rain.
Is that it's just that politeness, or is there like a superstition that deals with bringing in water?
No, I don't think it's to do with superstition necessarily. I think it's mostly to do with politeness. Just like if you step into an elevator, there's all these different positions inside the elevator, and they all have a different rank. So if you step into the elevator and you go all the way to the back of the elevator against the wall, that is the top position. So if you want to make an impression, then definitely do not stand there. And the lowest position is in front of the panel with all the buttons.
Uh-huh.
Because basically the person standing there is in the way, so you need to ask this person, can you please press number 4 for me? So this person is responsible for pushing all of the buttons. And then so the back is the most elevated, and then it's the sides, and then it's the middle, and then it's in front of the door, and then in front of the panel is the lowest position. So
you're giving a lot of nonverbal cues when you walk into an elevator and decide where you're standing.
Yes,
is what you're saying.
Sure, yeah. And even like where you sit at a table, at a dinner table, or at a conference table, all of these seats have different rankings. So you cannot just sit anywhere. If there's an alcove somewhere, that is the best position. So definitely don't sit there ever. And even with business cards, you need to present your business card with 2 hands and preferably lower than the person who's offering the business card to you. And you need to look at it and then put it in front of you. And then you need to make sure the business cards are ranked highest to lowest. So the most important person needs to be right in front of you where you can easily see the name and their position and all their details. And then the most insignificant person can be all the way to the side, but don't forget to put this most important person in front of you because it's very disrespectful not to do it. So you cannot just put it in a pile or put it in your bag or something. You need to display it nicely, or you might as well just go home because that's the end of the meeting.
So we're talking about social status. How do you determine what social status you are? Is it just by like your ranking in like your business? Is it your age? Is it like how do you determine where you are in this social ladder?
Yes, it depends on what group you are in. So, like if you are among friends, then it's age, seniority. But if it's in a company, it's usually the one who's been there the longest or who has the highest position. So they call this Sempai Kohai. So the Sempai is the more senior one, and the Kohai is the junior one. And even the Japanese humor is all based on Sempai Kohai. So their idea of humor is there's 2 people, there's a Senpai and a Kohai, and the Kohai keeps on saying stupid things, and then the Senpai keeps slapping the Kohai for being such an idiot. And Japanese people think that's it.
And is this a story? Is this a story that goes along with this idea? Or?
Yes. So basically, the Kohai cannot ever, under any circumstances, voice their opinion. And even if they are asked directly, they need to defer to the senpai and say, oh, no, I'm really stupid. I don't know anything. Please don't ask me. You should ask my senpai. He is very knowledgeable. He knows everything about this. And I'm just stupid and I cannot say anything on this matter. So even if someone has just come from university and has all the latest knowledge and knows all the new technology and all the latest things, then just shut up already because you're nothing. So you're not
allowed to talk.
Yeah, you're not meant to say anything. You're there for decoration only.
Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the ghost stories that you wanted to tell us about.
Yes, for sure. So there's this famous story about the headless samurai. So basically, before the first shogun came to power, the emperor was, like I said, the living god on earth, and he had all the authority, and he was both master of the universe, king, god, everything rolled into one. And whenever the emperor needed to do something dirty or something considered not up to an emperor's standard, he would get this warlord in to kind of put his power on the warlord, so the warlord could fix whatever needed to be fixing, and the emperor could remain his lofty status. And then once everything had cooled down, the power would go back to the emperor. So the capital of Japan was in Kyoto, and outside of Kyoto, it was just like a wilderness and nothing interesting. And basically, all the samurai positions go from father to eldest son. So the younger sons, they're just out of luck. So they would band together and go to Kanto area towards Tokyo, and they would be off fighting each other and trying to see who's the strongest and that kind of thing. But they didn't really have much of a position until one samurai came along, and he created quite a ruckus, and he deposed two local warlords and took his land. So then, of course, the emperor was like, this cannot be. This is a breach against my authority. This is all wrong. So they immediately beheaded him. But then came this whole story about this headless warrior, and the head would go all the way over Japan and suddenly pop up, and then at the graveside there were all these accidents, and people would die, and bulldozers would suddenly the next day when they would come over be turned over. And at one point after Second World War, they wanted to get rid of the grave, but there were so many mishaps happening that they were like, oh, okay, maybe this is not a good idea. And the last company to set up business close to the samurai's grave is MUFJ, that is a Japanese bank. And to appease this headless warrior, they created a bank account in his name and put a substantial amount of money in this bank account to keep him quiet. So, like, yeah, we really appreciate you, and we know, and if you are, if your desk happens to be facing the samurai, you should never face your back towards him, because that's disrespectful and you will not survive. So you have to make sure you never put your back towards that side of the building ever, because you will definitely not have a very long life after that. So that is a very famous one. And another very famous one is it's also in Tokyo, about the old hag. So Tokyo is built on a marsh, basically where Tsukiji is, the old fish market. That used to all be a marshy area. So there was this one hut and next to the marshy area, next to a big pond. And there was this one lady, and she had kind of like an inn there, and she would lure innocent victims to her inn. So if people came by boat and it was late at night, she would be the only place in town where they could take a rest. So she would take in these travelers. And then when they were sleeping, she would take this huge boulder and would crash it onto their head. And then the next day, drag the body to the marsh and put in the water. And she also had a daughter, and the daughter really disliked the fact that she kept killing all of her customers and robbing them blind. So one night she exchanged places with one of the guests and took their place. And then the mom came in and she did her thing and crashed the rock. And then the next day she found out that it was her daughter instead. So she felt terrible after that. So she dragged her daughter to the lake and put it in and then jumped out of it. And it's still a haunted place apparently.
Oh my! So the daughter sacrificed herself,
Yes.
and then the mother committed suicide.
Yes.
In her grief.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then
well, that was.
There's one last story I'd like to tell you about.
Okay.
A Second World War between 1937 and 1945. There's one park in Tokyo where there was a place called Unit 731, where they did these horrible experiments on people and were basically torturing them to death in the name of science. So that is also a very famous place where ghosts are. And the final story I want to tell you, which is probably famous among your listeners, is the slit mouth woman. So I don't know if you've heard of this one.
I haven't.
Okay, well, basically, it's a woman, and her mouth has been slit open all the way to her ears. So she will appear. There's a tunnel in Japan. I forgot whether it's close to Tokyo. I don't think so. But there's a tunnel, and if you venture out there at night, then you might run into this woman, and she will be disguised, and she will ask you, "Am I pretty?" And if the answer is no, she will kill you straight away. And if you say yes, then she will remove the cloth on her face and she will show her slit mouth. And then she will ask you again, do you think I'm pretty? And if the answer is again no, she will kill you. If the answer is yes, she will do the same to you. So the only possible options are to either distract or bribe her with money or candy, or to say that she's average looking. So if you want to escape her, then that is what you need to do.
And is it kind of like a boogeyman story that people tell kids? Like, does it have a purpose?
Yeah, it's just,
or is it just
each other? Like, oh, there's this scary place, and if you go there, then this lady will appear. And there's all kinds of stories like that where you need to do something or say something, and then something will appear, and you will most likely die because of it. And
it's a miracle that anyone survives.
Yeah, and lastly, there was also after the tsunami, right after the tsunami that happened in Tohoku, there were a lot of taxi drivers that reported people coming into their car and asking to be brought to a certain place. And then when they were nearly at the place, when they looked in the rearview mirror, the person would have disappeared. So that is also a very famous story that happened right after the crash. So I think now it's probably not so much of a thing anymore, but right after the tsunami, it was widely reported that every taxi driver had at least one of these stories.
Oh, interesting. Well, thank you so much, Nikki, for coming on. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to tell us all about your the history that you've learned through giving tours.
Yeah. Well, not only through giving tours, to be honest, because especially everything to do with Japanese business. My husband, even though he is of Japanese, or my ex-husband now, but even though he's of Japanese origin, he got these huge 3 binders. And he had to learn about Japanese business culture. So all of the details about Japanese business culture I got through him. And
Mm-hmm.
when he first started working in Japan, every day was like, oh, these crazy Japanese people. And I was like, I don't want to be rude, but
Interesting.
yeah.
So it was a shock to him as well
Yeah,
because
it was a great
he wasn't
awakening.
used to
Like
that.
the first day when he came to the office, they gave him a hard hat with his last name written on it,
Mm-hmm.
and he took a photo and put it on Facebook. Like, oh, look, these crazy Japanese! On my first day, they gave me a hard hat. I work in finance. I'm not in construction, but that was in case of an earthquake, so he would, just put on the hat and be safe.
Have a hard hat.
Yes.
For protection.
Mm.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. And unfortunately, we can't stay all day.
Yes.
We will be posting the links that you mentioned on our webpage so that when our audience books their flight to Japan, you know which company to take your tours through.
Yes.
And we're honored that you joined us on Fabric of Folklore. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure, and this is not to you, Nikki, this is to our audience, make sure that you call your mom and tell her to listen to our podcast. And if your mom is like my mom, you might have to explain what a podcast is and how to listen to it or watch it on YouTube.
Yes.
Because we're a new podcast, just like just the simple act of you telling your friends and family to give us a listen is incredibly helpful. You have the power to help us grow, so make sure you hit that subscribe button as well, and make your way to our Facebook community group and tell us what you liked about today's episode, and make sure you check out Nikki's link. Her one more time, just in case you didn't catch it in the beginning. Her company's name is Tokyo Tours.
And Tokyo is spelled with an I, not with a Y, so the Dutch way.
Oh, Tokyo with an I.
Yes.
So thanks so much, everybody, and keep on raveling, folklore enthusiasts. Until next time.